with regard to your security posture, security should not be an afterthought. It should be a part of your culture. People should be constantly identifying and noticing and reporting that there's a security issue.
In the news, I read about a zero-day vulnerability in Microsoft Windows that was exploited by hackers for over 18 months before it was discovered and patched. This vulnerability allowed attackers to execute remote code, potentially compromising sensitive data and systems across numerous organizations. The exploit involved a flaw in the Windows MS HTML platform, enabling malicious actors to gain unauthorized access and escalate privileges on targeted systems. The long-term exploitation of this vulnerability highlights the importance of continuous monitoring and adaptive security measures. But first, John, can you explain what a zero-day is?
In a nutshell, a zero-day is a vulnerability or a risk that there is no patch for. It's not widely known to the public that it exists. The typical way that we find out about vulnerabilities is you have security professionals who their day-to-day job is to take an application or a program to beat it up and try to find exploits or vulnerabilities that exist within it. Once they do, they notify whoever the developer is to make them aware of the vulnerability, how they identified it, where it exists, how to replicate it. And then there's a period of time that it takes that developer to come up with a patch or a fix for that vulnerability. So all the way up until that point, it's still considered a zero-day. The security expert knows about it because they identified it. The developer knows about it because they're trying to fix it. But the public doesn't know about it because they don't want to tip off attackers and malicious actors that there's a risk in this software. In the case of this Microsoft one, where the attackers apparently have known about it for a long time, an attacker or some malicious actor identified the security vulnerability, or even a security professional may have done so, and they chose to sell that to bad actors as opposed to notifying the developer to get it fixed, because there's more money in it, obviously, with criminals. So that vulnerability was sold to somebody or was identified by somebody, whether it's a nation state level guy or somebody sitting in their basement with the lights off, and they actively use this exploit.
A good example of that is all your patchwork that comes out of anything, whether it be a server, iPhone, Android phone. They'll always have security flaws that come out because people found a way to get through it. The same thing applies when your servers in your internal and external network, and even a cloud environment.
And so penetration testing likely isn't going to find it aside from somebody stumbling across it. So that's where continuous monitoring comes in, right?
Yes, so the issue you have with penetration testing is that you have a finite amount of time to assess the network that you're testing. The attackers out there, they have all the time in the world. They could spend 6 months or a year hammering away at something, whereas a penetration test, unless it's an internal professional that's a part of your company that's performing it, they have a finite amount of time, anywhere from 1 day to a couple of weeks, depending upon the scope of the engagement. So if they come across a zero-day, it's going to be a configuration thing or some kind of an injection type of attack in a web application or something like that. They're not typically going to find a vulnerability that exists within an actual program or a service like SSH or Apache or something like that.
And then, of course, having a robust incident response plan is also a good idea, right?
Yes, so the best way to identify when someone has exploited a zero-day vulnerability is going to be in your incident response methodology.
And then in between, when clients haven't had an incident, thankfully, then what should they be doing in between maybe penetration tests, since penetration tests aren't going to pick this type of thing up?
So with regard to your security posture, security should not be an afterthought. It shouldn't be oh great, I got to get this security thing done so that we can look good or whatever. It should be a part of your culture. So people should be constantly identifying and noticing and reporting that there's a security issue.